It's pretty common knowledge that the ocean is a terrifying and inhospitable place, specifically designed with the intention of killing humans in the most nightmarish ways possible. But what you may not have known is that it's divided into 5 different layers known as pelagic zones, each being differentiated by how deep they are.
Like, can we talk about...
No, not that kind of deep. Oh god, not that kind either! I'm of course talking about their depth underwater, with each zone becoming more and more horrifying as they descend. So today I've taken it upon myself to go over the differences between these zones, including what monsters one may expect to find down there, so that you, the viewer, can make more informed decisions when deciding which historical disaster site you'd like to become a fine red mist next to. It also goes without saying that if you have thalassophobia, also known as the fear of the ocean, this video will 100% make it worse. You have been warned. This is the You guys know these intros are supposed to be shitty, right? We'll start with some background on what the fuck these zones actually are. The entire open ocean is considered to be the pelagic zone, which consists of the water column of the open ocean, which is then divided into 5 different regions. I guarantee none of that made sense, so I'll explain further. You may have noticed I said the open ocean, which doesn't refer to the entirety of the wet, salty mass, only the sections of it beyond the continental shelf. Think of the drop-off from Finding Nemo. The place with all the creepy anthrofish is the continental shelf, also known as the neritic zone, and the other place where Nemo smacks the butt is the pelagic zone. Also, Marlin wasn't wrong for not wanting Nemo to go beyond the reef. Like, have you seen drop-offs in real life? They're fucking horrifying. It should also be noted that the pelagic and neritic zones overlap at some parts. Like, the neritic zone is technically the pelagic zone, but not the other way around. This isn't super important, but it'll save a little bit of confusion later. I also use the term water column, which is used in oceanography, or the study of oceans, to describe the characteristics of seawater within the different regions of the pelagic zone. These characteristics are temperature, salinity, light penetration, pH, dissolved oxygen, and nutrient salts, all of which differ in each zone. For example, the temperature in the upper zones will be higher than that of the lower zones, and the same is true for factors like light penetration. Does anyone even get these references, or am I just doing them for myself at this point? Anyway, hopefully the nonsensical bullshit makes sense now, because I'm going to be using those terms a decent amount. The entire pelagic zone has a total volume of 1.37 billion cubic kilometers, or 330 million cubic miles of water, and a vertical range, or maximum depth, of 11,000 meters, or 36,000 feet. And that's not including the rest of the ocean in the neritic zone, which together with the pelagic zone covers 71% of the Earth's surface, with an average depth of 3,688 meters, or 12,000 feet. Life is found all throughout the pelagic zone, decreasing in population and abundance of species as the depth increases, being determined by different characteristics in the water column as well as the topography of the ocean floor. Don't you feel like an accomplished scientist now that you understand oceanography terms? And isn't it fucking boring? God, I can't believe these cunts do this shit for a living without Liam painting themselves at their earliest convenience. Also, the report or like website thing I'm getting this information from talks about how when you look at the Earth, it's obvious that it's mostly water, which is making me feel like it's not a great source anymore. So I think we're going to finish the background and start getting into the specific zones now. So starting from the top, we have the Epipelagic or sunlight zone. As anyone over the age of fucking fetus could guess, this zone is the brightest of the 5. It extends from the surface to around 200 meters or 660 feet deep and contains the neritic zone we talked about before, which is the space above the continental shelf. Also known as a euphotic zone, this region has enough light to permit photosynthesis in organisms such as phytoplankton and plants, thus creating the energy that is then passed on to other organisms through the food chain. And it's for this reason that the sunlight zone contains 90% of all marine life. It's kind of crazy that almost everything that lives in the ocean could be found in the top 1.8% of the water just because the fucking sun exists. This euphotic zone can vary with season, latitude, and water turbidity, which is a measure of how clear the water is. For example, water that would come out of your tap at home has low turbidity, but water that would give you all sorts of pant-sharding diseases has high turbidity. The temperature in this zone can vary from 36 degrees Celsius or 97 degrees Fahrenheit in the Persian Gulf to -2 degrees Celsius or 28 degrees Fahrenheit in the Arctic. If you're wondering how the water doesn't freeze below, well, freezing temperature, it's because the salt water has something called salt in it, and that makes the water molecules have to cool down even more in order to become a solid. I could go into all the other water column factors that determine the epipelagic zone, but do you really want to know about the parts per thousand salinity measurements? It's about 36. It may come as a surprise to some to find out that this zone is actually the most dangerous and deadly of all the zones it will cover. Statistically speaking, of course. I'm sure you'd stand a better chance of survival swimming at a beach than you would shoving sea cucumbers up your ass in some deep-ass trench. But it does have to be noted just how many people meet their demise at this zone, whether it be your boat splitting in half and sinking during a massive storm, or fucking drowning because you decided to jump in the water at Bondi Beach fully clothed. If you think that's an over-exaggeration, watch a single episode of Bondi Rescue and then come talk to me. Obviously, the likelihood of entering spectate mode is low when considering the massive amount of people that survive encounters in this zone on a day-to-day basis. Out of all the people who've gone to deeper zones, the percentage of those who haven't resurfaced is far higher the deeper you go compared to the epipelagic zone. So what kind of creatures can you find here? Well, basically everything, with famous standouts being the long-spined snipefish, the leucocid crab shrimp, and who could forget everyone's favorite, Fistellaria commersoni. Genuinely just name a fucking ocean animal and there's a good chance it'll be here. Along with a wide variety of organisms comes a wide variety in biomes. Well, scientifically it's the other way around. Like, more biome diversity means more species. I just needed the segue to make sense. An example of these biomes are coastal or intertidal zones, which are found along shorelines where the ocean meets the land. This biome includes tide pools, rocky shores, and sandy beaches, and is influenced by the changes between high and low tides. Common finds here include mollusks, small fish, and chunks of dead surfers. Another major biome, and I mean fucking major, are coral reefs, which are found in tropical and subtropical waters and are home to a significant percentage of all marine species. Like, the Great Barrier Reef alone is home to 25% of all known marine species. Good thing they'll all be gone soon. Common finds here include, everything. Yeah, fucking everything. From fish to plankton to even fucking whales. If these things disappear, we're all cooked. On that extremely depressing note, we move to the next layer, the Mesopelagic zone, which extends from 200 meters or 660 feet to 1,000 meters or 3,280 feet deep and accounts for about 20% of the ocean's total volume. It's also known as the Twilight Zone, despite having nothing to do with movies about albino Batman flirting with high schoolers. Ironically, species with the word vampire in their name are actually found at lower depths. The real reason it gets this name is because it's almost pitch black down there, with the zone beginning at depths where only 1% of surface light can reach and extending to where absolutely no light does. As you may have guessed, photosynthesis here is a little more difficult, and as such, organisms evolved to live here just fucking eat each other instead of being living solar panels. And to compensate for this lack of light, the sea creatures themselves start to make their own. This is known as bioluminescence, and it can be one of the most beautiful or terrifying things to ever witness. It's a product of chemical reactions in the animals' bodies and can happen in a variety of different ways. And just looking at the descriptions now, I'm pretty sure most of these words aren't English. It's not a common trait on land, but it does occur in some organisms like fireflies and glowworms. It also has a wide variety of uses, ranging from hunting to reproduction. So if you ever find yourself in the Mesopelagic zone and see a pretty light, you're either going to become a mouthful or get a mouthful. You know, of fish cum. I'm talking about fish cum. I was expecting the horrifying monsters to start appearing a little bit lower than here, but then I discovered the bristlemouth, a family of fish that ranges from the size of your finger to slightly bigger than a classroom ruler, and having a mouthful of these gross hair-like teeth. And correct me if I'm wrong, might actually be how they got their names. Thankfully, they're extremely rare, and by that I of course mean they're the most numerous vertebrate on Earth, with some population estimates reaching into the quadrillions. Other common finds include jellyfish, anglerfish, and giant squid, but it's mostly just a fuck ton of plankton. Many organisms in the zone move up to the Epipelagic zone at night and return at dawn, essentially using the cover of nighttime to hide from predators in a similar way they would in the Twilight Zone. This process is known as diel vertical migration and is done in such large quantities that sonar operators in World War II would often misinterpret signals detecting the fuck tons of plankton as the sea floor. Another common feeding method is eating literal shit that falls from the upper layers, but that's way more boring and gross, so I'll leave it at that. Fish at these depths are ridiculously difficult to study, as most of them have something called a swim bladder, which helps them to control their buoyancy underwater. The issue comes when scientists try to bring them to the surface for further study, which causes these bladders to act like a school shooter's head after going 0 and 30 and fucking burst, killing the fish in the process. There's not a lot of fishing aimed at these areas, apparently with the reasoning of limiting environmental impact, like fisheries have ever given a fuck about that. I kind of cocked myself when talking about the biomes of the Epipelagic. They're all extremely varied and unique, and I'm able to talk about them in decent detail. Then you look at the Mesopelagic biomes, and it's all just different types of open ocean. One of them is literally defined by having a thickish top layer of dead plankton and shit, nicely named marine snow, and fucking grossly named ocean dandruff, due to the way that small particles of this layer float downwards towards the seabed. So in that incredible disappointment, we can again move deeper into the Bathypelagic or Midnight Zone. The name Bathypelagic stems from the Greek word for deep, which is so fucking uncreative it makes me wish they'd just stuck to carving detailed marble penises. Plus, everyone knows the Romans were experts on depth anyway, at least with each other's booty hole. Anyway, this zone ranges from 1,000 to 4,000 meters or 3,300 to 13,000 feet deep and is completely pitch black, thus giving it the name, the Midnight Zone. The only light that can be found down here is from bioluminescence. And remember how I mentioned it can be either beautiful or horrifying? Well, this is where it's fucking horrifying, as pretty much every animal down here uses it to help them fucking murder something. And if it's not being used for murder, it's used to help them avoid being murdered. For example, a species known as the dragonfish have a barbel under their chin. Deep sea shrimp use glowing mucus strands to trap their prey, and most famously, the anglerfish has a lure dangling above its head. The idea of these lures is that any potential prey will mistake these glowing lights as food and swim towards it, only to be fucking deep-throated by a fish with dentition like an Englishman. Also, I just realized, how the fuck did four-head fish and Ellen DeGenerate survive at this depth? The pressure would have fucking crushed them. Speaking of which, it's around this depth where pressure really starts to become an issue. Just ask these billionaires. Oh, wait, you can't. With every 10 meters you descend into the ocean, the pressure increases by 1 atmosphere, essentially meaning you'll feel twice as heavy 10 meters deep, 3 times as heavy 20 meters deep, and so on. Now, imagine now at depths at the Midnight Zone. It gets pretty fucking incomprehensible, so it's a good thing I found an easy comparison. At the top of the Midnight Zone, which is around 1,000 meters or 3,300 feet, the pressure is equivalent to a small car pressing down on every square inch of your body. And then at 4,000 meters or 13,000 feet, the square inch grows to the size of a postcard, and the car grows to the size of a fucking Boeing 747, which weighs 400 times more. So yeah, bottom line, these fish would become a commonly enjoyed disc-shaped breakfast food made from flour, eggs, milk, and butter. As such, the horrifying beasts that frequent this area have adapted to these harsh conditions by having soft bodies, specialized proteins, and arguably most importantly, a lack of gas-filled spaces like a swim bladder. Fish that live in shallower depths have an organ called a swim bladder that's filled with gases like oxygen that expands and contracts depending on the water pressure, helping them to stay afloat in differing depths. As you may have guessed, extreme pressures wouldn't be too kind on these swim bladders, so fish in the Midnight Zone just opted to not even have them at all, instead just opting to have tissues with high fat contents to keep them afloat instead. It's also apparently a competition of who can look the most fucked down there, with strong contenders including the gulper eel, the hagfish, and the black swallower, which funnily enough was my nickname in high school. Also, if that's not bad enough, funny whales also dive to these depths in search of food. I really don't understand why more people aren't terrified of whales, especially ones with gigantic fucking teeth that eat squid. Now imagine that, but it could be right in front of you down here and you'd have no fucking idea. There's also another type of fish that lives at these depths, but its name has slipped out my after entering my bony ear. There's also a few biomes one's fish self can find down here. The largest and most obvious is the open ocean, which is about as self-explanatory as something can be. There's also deep sea hydrothermal vents that occur along tectonic plate boundaries, being created when magma meets the seawater. Temperatures at the dickhole of these ocean cocks can reach 400 degrees Celsius or 750 degrees America. Most life here relies on a process called chemosynthesis, essentially photosynthesis but with chemicals like hydrogen sulfide instead of light. Similarly, there are cold seep biomes, which are functionally the same as the hydrothermal vents, as they're both relatively small areas with high concentrations of chemicals seeping from the sea floor that support life. Unlike the hydro vents, the cold seep biome is far colder and more stable due to tectonic activity, the vent biomes being more erratic. The grossest biome, in my opinion, has got to be what's known as whale falls, which are temporary biomes that occur when a whale trips on an ocean rock and ocean dies, and then ocean falls to the ocean floor. While temporary, these carcasses can provide sustenance to all kinds of scavenging organisms, from the aforementioned hagfish to sleeper sharks and, once all the tissue is gone, bone-eating worms and bacteria. Strangely enough, there are several known species of coral that live at these depths, making up our fourth biome in the Midnight Zone. Not too much is known about these species, other than, unlike normal coral species, they feed on drifting plankton and the marine snow we talked about before. They only grow a few millimeters a year and can live for millennia. Then finally, and conveniently for segues, the biomes that transition into the deeper zones, like the deep sea trenches. These zones typically begin in the Bathypelagic and descend into the Abyssopelagic or abyssal zone. See? Told you it was convenient. It's at these depths that scientists gave up on naming these zones after times of day. It's not like there's a time darker than midnight anyway. Instead, they decided to name this zone after the laboratory's communal goon rat, with which the scientists, single of course, would take turns hollowing out the rodent with their phalluses. I don't even know what I'm fucking saying anymore, man. I just wanted to shit on scientists for something. Also known as the abyssal zone, depths here can range from 4,000 to 6,000 meters or 13,100 to 19,700 feet deep, and the pressure can be like 3 full-grown elephants pressing down on every square inch of your body, or the weight of a blue whale, which is about 140 tons, compressed to the size of a dinner plate. Any submersible hoping to reach these depths must be reinforced with titanium, or else risk having a mystifying experience. Get it? Because they all turned into red fucking mist. Do you know when the Titan imploded, the temperatures within the sub would have reached temperatures as hot as the sun's surface? Yeah, fucked, right? Sounds painful until you realize it all happened faster than a human can even react, let alone register pain. Anyway, that's enough of the Ocean Gate references for now, at least until I run out of things to say again. This zone can reach temperatures close to freezing and covers almost 60% of the entire sea floor. It's extremely oxygen rich thanks to fuck tons of ocean currents, but there's basically nothing down here that wants to use it. Once again, the only things capable of surviving these extremely harsh environments are literal monsters, a fuck ton of sea cucumbers, and semen-colored bugs called amphipods. And when I say monsters, I mean monsters. Take the fang-toothed fish, for example, which has the longest teeth in comparison to its body size out of any animal in the ocean. Worst of all is they're actually the most common at 500 to 2,000 meters or 1,600 to 6,500 feet. But I guess don't like seeing motherfish cover their children's eyes as they swim past, so they hide in the dark depths where they can stroke their fang-toothed cocks in peace. Other pedophilic creatures include this thing called the cusk eel. And I was gonna make a joke about how it looks, but every single photo of it looks completely different. Here it looks like a sad clown painting. I'm struggling to decide if this one looks more like a poo or a cartoon character with a giant nose. This isn't a fish, but a lizard, and this is one of the only normal ones I could find. The only consistent theme I found is its striking resemblance to the... And yeah, like I said, there's just sea cucumbers fucking everywhere. The main methods that organisms use to feed here are basically the same as the Bathypelagic, that being through whale falls, marine snow, and hydrothermal vents. Same with the biomes, mostly just flat, empty nothingness with the occasional underwater volcano and hydrothermal vent. Oh yeah, add some coral reefs around the volcanoes too. The only important thing I'll note is that this is the last zone that encompasses the open ocean. Essentially, it's the last zone that's connected all around the world, and not just in specific pockets like the Hadal-Pelagic or Hadal zone. Literally named after the Greek god of the underworld, the Hadal zone is the final and deepest pelagic zone we'll be covering in this video. It ranges from depths of 6,000 to 11,000 meters or 20,000 to 36,000 feet deep, which are depths only possible within underwater trenches. Surprisingly enough, people have actually visited this zone. I'm specifically thinking of a certain film director, most famous of course for directing the critically acclaimed Piranha 2, and nothing else anyone's ever heard of. Like, for fuck's sake, he's one of 30 people, 30, that have ever been to this depth. Like, the others are all researchers and record holders, and I know James Cameron broke records in the box office for directing Piranha 2, but I'm talking about real record holders, like the first woman astronaut and the first person to reach the highest and lowest points on Earth. Just goes to show if these bitch-ass scientists locked the fuck in and made some bank, they wouldn't have had to become a scientist to have a chance at reaching the deepest depth of the ocean. They could just buy their way down there instead. So, as I said before, these depths are only really possible in underwater trenches, which are formed at tectonic plate boundaries. That's right, we're getting into Earth sciences for a bit. So if you didn't know, the Earth is covered in these massive sheets of rock called tectonic plates, and the locations where different tectonic plates meet are called boundaries. There are 3 different types of tectonic plate boundaries: convergent, divergent, and transform. Convergent is where 2 plates push together, usually with one sinking under the other, which we'll get to in a second, or pushing against each other, which creates mountain ranges. Divergent is the opposite of convergent, and has nothing to do with that fuck-ass awful franchise featuring some dude who thought it'd be a good idea to name himself after his penis length, and transform is where they drag against each other. Trenches are formed at convergent plate boundaries where denser oceanic plates sink underneath continental plates, and it's in this area here where the trench forms as the ocean floor copies the shape of the subducting crust. This creates super sharp and sudden declines that are relatively thin, around 50 to 100 kilometers or 30 to 60 miles wide. But because they're on these gigantic ass plate boundaries, they can be up to 50,000 kilometers or 31,000 miles in length. That's a pretty fucked length to girth ratio if I've ever seen one. For reference, let's get this motherfucker again. If his name is to be believed, his veiny bratwurst measures 4 inches in length, and if his meaty love pipe was to be subjected to the width to length ratio of some trenches, about 1 in 500, it would be the width of a human hair. Pretty impressive, honestly. I wonder what the crew of the Titan submerged.
No, they're dead. They're fucking dead. Don't ask them about Theo James's penis. He looks like a shark.
Weirdly enough, these trenches only cover 0.25% of the ocean seafloor in total, but account for over 40% of the ocean's total depth range. They're also most common in the Pacific, which makes sense when you consider the fact that it's the biggest fucking ocean in the world, so statistically this would be obvious. The deepest this zone gets is 10,994 meters or 36,070 feet at the Challenger Deep in the famous Mariana Trench, with other trenches like the Tonga Trench and the Philippine Trench coming close at 10,823 meters or 35,509 feet and 10,540 meters or 34,580 feet deep respectively. God, that took so many fucking takes to say it's not funny. Something interesting to add is because these tectonic plates are constantly moving inwards and one is always moving down as a result, the trenches at these boundaries actually deepen by tiny amounts each year, ranging from a few millimeters to over 10 centimeters. Anyone using the imperial system, that's like not a whole lot. I don't know the conversion, please don't hurt me. Something I find kind of terrifying is that these trenches are relatively close to land, with the closest being the Sunda Trench off the coast of Sumatra and Java, which is only about 200 kilometers or 125 miles out to sea. If you're wondering, the Mariana Trench is 344 kilometers or 200 miles out. Think about it, that's only a few hours on the motorway and you're right above one of the most inhospitable environments known to man. I'm sure that's a pretty long distance, but when you consider the horrifying monsters that lurk down here and the brutal violence that occurs on a day-to-day basis, it's not fucking far enough. Actually, saying horrifying monsters is kind of misleading. Most things down here look like plush or sex toys on account of the fucking insane pressure that's equivalent to 50 jumbo jets stacked on top of you. Alternatively, for the French people watching this that haven't weighed a jumbo jet recently, that's like carrying the Eiffel Tower on your head. Given that new species are discovered on every expedition, and there have been very few fucking expeditions, the list of things that live down here is reasonably short for now. Starting with the plush toys, we have the snailfish, which is the deepest living fish ever discovered, being found at depths of 8,336 meters or about 27,000 feet. Apparently there's a bunch that live in shallow coastal areas, which specifically the differences regarding air bladders, you'd think this would make them different species, but I guess not. Despite their millennial bait looks, they're the top predators in their environments, feeding on tiny crustaceans and the souls of children. There's also the eel pout, which, yeah, looks like a mildly upset eel pulling a face, and they can look like anything from a plushie to a fucking poo, which makes me want to move on to the sex toys now. Sea cucumbers are among the most common things you'll find down here, as their lifestyle is very well suited to the viciously harsh conditions at these depths. They barely need any food, they don't move a lot, have soft bodies, perfect for face sitting, and the lack of predators mean the penises can multiply without much issue. They're so common, in fact, that they account for 90% of all large animals found in some trenches. Maybe that's why James Cameron wanted to come down so bad. That horny cunt was craving some Hadal penis. Not all sea cucumbers are phallic, however. Some species, like, Peony agony can like half float / half swim above the seafloor, and others like the awfully named sea pig look like something out of the Alien movies. Also, there's this thing. I don't really know what it is, but I wanted to show it anyway. I would talk about the biomes, but they're the same shit as the past 2 or 3 zones, so I won't fucking bother. The main difference is that whale falls aren't really as common here, but to be fair, would we even know? It's not like we're scouring trench floors for dead whales anyway. Instead, the soft sediment floor is considered to be a biome itself, supposedly a super pristine one on account of how slow the sediment builds up. And to finish this on the lowest point possible, several pieces of rubbish and litter have been found at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, from plastic bags to microplastics and the amphipods that live there. And there's also rubbish at the top of Mount Everest. So if you're keeping count, that means there's rubbish at both the Earth's highest and lowest points. Anyway, there you have it. That's every ocean layer or pelagic zone explained in more detail than anyone ever asked for. If you're not yet convinced that the ocean is a place that should be avoided by humans like the fucking plague, then I really don't know what will. It's taken countless lives already and, well, it's clearly not done yet. Be sure to let me know which zone you'd like to become a fine red mist in. For me, personally, I'd choose the Hadal zone, specifically the Mariana Trench. Not only would it be a quicker death than all the other zones, but I also love going where James Cameron has gone before, hence why I plug his fucking misses on the daily. While making this video, this channel surpassed 2,000 subs and we're well on the way to even more, so thank you to everyone who's been following me over the past however fucking long it's been. I also received my first paycheck from YouTube, which has been a dream of mine since I wanted to make Minecraft videos with my friends in year 3. I've been doing this shit without that incentive anyway though. I make these because I like doing it, but it's a nice motivator nonetheless. Also, I tried to post a TikTok about that wombat bitch, but it got taken down after 30 fucking minutes due to harassment and bullying, and I got a strike on my account. So I've decided I'm never posting on that fuck-ass app again. People can call each other slurs in comment sections and it's completely fine, but I can't call an American a cunt. Anywho, I'll fuck off now. Do all the usual shit YouTubers ask you to do or whatever, and be sure to comment what videos you'd like to see next. Thank you all for watching, and enjoy whatever horse shit I decide to use as an outro.
Hold me. Hold me. Yeah. Hold me. Baby, tell me to go. Hold me. Hold me. Yeah.
Comment James Cameron was snubbed at the Oscars for Piranha 2 in the comments if you made it this far. Which, like, what the fuck are you still doing here? Piss off.